There it is. He timed it right.
Counting to explode with the left. Oh, and that right, but Davis took off some of the steam of the punch, but still.
Welcome to the motherfucking later. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. A light at the end of the tunnel for what is the embattled Gervonta Davis. A Baltimore judge has recalled the arrest warrant for Tank Davis over an alleged probation violation linked to his 2020 hit-and-run case. The state did not oppose the request, and his attorney says Davis remains compliant. Davis is still facing separate charges in Florida. Another chapter closed for now. I'm no attorney, but it would seem the situation in Florida, the woman who's alleging that he came to her place of work and struck her, and his subsequent arrest, would constitute a violation of his probation, except he hasn't been convicted of those charges yet. You have to figure that if he is, then the stuff in Baltimore will come into it. That would constitute a violation of his probation, and he may get extra time as a result. So he's not out of the woods yet, far from it. In spite of all of this, Eubank Cruz has him at the top of the pile, the top of the list for fighters he wants to fight. Talked about it the other day. I don't even think Gervonta Davis wants to keep fighting, but he may have to if by some chance he gets out of all of this and gets to keep his freedom. He may not have enough money to retire on. We know that the biggest pay-per-view he's ever been a part of was the Ryan Garcia fight. One that did an estimated over a million pay-per-view buys, a nice chunk of change. If Gervonta Davis actually got to see it, got to keep it. Al Heyman is said to have stolen Floyd Mayweather's money, so who's to say he didn't steal Gervonta's too? He's dumber than Floyd, having generated less money than Floyd that I don't think, based on his earnings so far, Gervonta Davis has made enough to retire on. He didn't get to make the $40 million with Jake Paul. Now, if he had, that might have been enough for him to sail into the sunset, but he screwed that up for himself, and now, I'm thinking, if he can find a way to beat this case and stay a free man, he may have to keep fighting. There is an argument that the Eubank Cruz fight might be bigger now than it was when they initially met in 2021 because nobody knew who Eubank Cruz was. Remember, he was a late replacement for Rolly Romero, who at that time had his own legal troubles, so it didn't sell but so much. The second one might sell a little bit more now that people are more familiar with Eubank, but how much more? Not that much, because that's not the rematch they were asking Gervonta to have. The rematch they want him to have is the Roach fight. They've got unfinished business. I don't expect Gervonta Davis to do that, but that's the rematch people want to see him in. Not necessarily Eubank Cruz. Still, there is an argument that a second fight with Eubank could generate more money than the first, only because the first didn't generate much at all, so the bar is set pretty low that almost anything would be better than what you did in that fight. Because it didn't do shit. Now, whatever the second fight generates, it won't be what he would have got with Jake Paul if he hadn't messed that up for himself, and that's essentially saying that fighting Eubank again, if Gervonta even gets that opportunity, will not be enough for him to retire on. He's a champion in recess now via the WBA. I don't expect that if he were to come back, he would fight Floyd Schofield for his old title. I don't think so. I think maybe he goes to 40, fights a familiar face in Eubank for his WBC interim title. Not that Gervonta cares about titles, because he doesn't, but if he gets to keep his freedom, that's how it might go. We know he's not going to fight Shakur. We know he's not going to fight Devin. We know. If he gets to keep his freedom and beats this case. Though I question whether or not he can beat this case, because police reports indicate there's CCTV of the incident of Gervonta Davis coming to this woman's place of work and assaulting her. He would have been on probation at the time of the incident. If they can prove that happened, and video footage would, he's gonna see some time. Not a whole lot, I imagine. It's not capital murder and it's not a RICO case, but enough that his career would effectively be over. Here's the one saying he was thinking about wrapping it up last year. So if Gervonta Davis spends what remains of his prime years behind a cell, he's cooked. What are we talking about? 3 years? 4? Maybe 5? He'd get out in his mid to late 30s. He could try to keep boxing. But you know, it's really all downhill after 35, especially for smaller fighters that need to be fast and sharp, need those fast twitch reflexes. The bottom line, Looks like there's a strong chance that Gervonta Davis could see some time as a result of this latest incident. To where talking about an Isak Cruz rematch might all be much ado about nothing. Men's super middleweight news, Hamza Sheeraz world title fight opponent has been revealed. Hamza Sheeraz is set to fight for the newly vacated WBO super middleweight title next, with opponent revealed by trainer Andy Ree. Hamza Sheeraz, 22-0 with 1 draw and 18 knockouts, has been ordered to fight for the WBO super middleweight title of the world in his next fight, and the opponent has been revealed. The Riyadh season ambassador moved up to 168 for the first time in his last outing, where he headlined in Queens, New York against hometown hero Edgar Berlanga. Shiraz won the fight in dominant fashion, stopping the gutsy Berlanga in the 5th round. The man that resides from Ilford, London, has been the ultimate beneficiary of Riyadh season's entry into the sport of boxing. Shiraz has struck up an excellent relationship with Turki El Sheikh and has proved himself on the highest stage. Shiraz has co-main evented Wembley Stadium, knocked out Austin Ammo Williams as Queensberry Promotions team captain on the 5 vs 5 in Riyadh, and also challenged for the WBC middleweight title, all on Riyadh season events. Now at super middle, capturing a world title seems inevitable for the hard-hitting Londoner. The WBO initially ordered Hamza Shiraz versus Diego Pacheco for the vacant title. However, because Team Pacheco pulled out of the fight due to ongoing changes behind the scenes, the WBO have found a new opponent for Shiraz. Head coach of Shiraz, Andy Ree, has confirmed to Talk Sport Boxing that he is set to fight number 4 ranked Alem Begic, 29-0 with 1 draw and 23 knockouts for the title. Begic is the WBO European champion and has fought on events in Austria and Germany for the majority of his career, patiently building up to a breakout opportunity. Sources suggest that the bout is set to land on a Queensberry Promotions show in the UK in June. This will be Shiraz's first outing on a show not staged by Riyadh Season or Ring Magazine since February of 2024, when he knocked out Liam Williams in the first round at the Copper Box Arena in Stratford, East London. So Diego ducked. Diego's last fight was his first fight since separating from Jose Benavidez. I get the impression that now may not be the most opportune time for Diego to take on a fight like this when his corner situation is fluid and ever-changing, but I'm not in the business of making excuses for fighters. The fighters are always going to have a reason why they do what they're doing. You had an opportunity to box for a world title. You had an opportunity to fight one of the bigger names at your weight, and you didn't take it. So to me, a duck is a duck is a duck. And it doesn't stop being a duck until you get another crack at the apple to fight that same Hamza Shiraz, which we don't even know if that's going to happen. So Diego Pacheco is out, and unbeaten Alem Begic is in. This would be the first time that a lot of people are getting a look at this guy. Unbeaten in 31 fights, but who has he been fighting for 31 fights? Does that will tell the story of how good he is or how good he ain't? Last in action, in April of last year, opposite the ring, unbeaten Mahdi Safdari.
What?
We stopped in the second round of a contest scheduled for 10. The general overview of his resume so far is there are no familiar faces there, no world-level contenders, so it's largely pedestrian. The fight with Hamza is scheduled to go down in the summer of this year, which would make it about a year's time from his last fight to his next one, as the fight with Mahdi Safdari was the only fight that he had last year. So as you can imagine, Hamza being the more proven fighter of the two, he will be the favorite with the odds makers and the fans. The expectation is Hamza should win. Beyond that fight,
Bitch.
Chris Eubank Jr. is eyeing a super middleweight world title shot after Conor Benn rematch loss. Benn dominated the middleweight rematch in November at Tottenham, dropping Eubank Jr. twice for a UD revenge win. Now, routes open at 168 versus Hamza Shiraz for WBO gold. You know, it's going to be an earmark for Hamza Shiraz if and when he fights Begic and beats Begic and becomes a world champion for the very first time in his pro boxing career. But the bigger fight is the Eubank Jr. fight, who's now moving up to 168 after boiling down to 160 for so many years now. Though it won't be his first foray in the super middleweight division, you will recall that in the World Boxing Super Series, Chris Eubank Jr. was campaigning as a super middleweight before he was outclassed by George Groves in the final, subsequently returning to the middleweight division where he's spent a number of years. Now he's moving up. He never became a world champion at 160 or 168. This will be his second crack at the apple, and a fight between him and Hamza Shiraz across the pond would be worth some money. The only fight bigger than this one for Chris would have to be a Canelo Alvarez fight. You will recall that Chris was approached for a Canelo fight something like a year ago, and he turned it down. The only fight that I could see getting in the way of a potential Hamza Shiraz fight down the line is that fight. Both Chris and Canelo are set to return to action.
Chris is washed.
I feel like a Canelo Alvarez fight even happening is contingent upon whether or not Canelo is still interested in boxing Chris. If not, his biggest option then becomes Hamza.
Chris is washed.
You see what he had to go through with a blown-up welterweight in Conor Benn. That if he's now going to be fighting 168-pounders at 168, he's going to get washed. At his age, his boxing isn't going to get better, his reflexes are not going to get faster, his punch and his punch resistance will not improve. If Chris is sticking around, it's likely to make a few more dollars in a big fight, build himself back up for one more big payday, because I don't think he has much more left to give the sport. 168 for him will be a healthier and easier weight to make than 160 was, so that should buy him a little bit more time, but he's got to be careful about who he shares the ring with, because the guys at 168, they run pretty big. Hamza's a big 168, even though he just got there. He's got a lot of height, a lot of length, the right frame to fill out in the super middleweight division. It's really the story that not only is Hamza on the eve of becoming a world champion, but down the line, he could defend the title in a lucrative fight against Chris Eubank Jr. that I think most people would favor Hamza to win, though Eubank Jr. would bring all the name value to the fight.
It's an easy knockout win for Hamza Shiraz, who you have to figure, sequence of fights like that, he's on his way to becoming a star. One of Frank Warren's bright young stars in the sport today. Perhaps one of the biggest names in British boxing down the line.
Elsewhere in the world of boxing, veteran boxing scribe Dan Raphael, via his sources, says Goldenboy and DAZN, who are still working on a new deal, are doing a March 14th show at the Honda Center in Anaheim that would include Oscar Collazo versus Melvin Jerusalem strawweight unification and a women's undisputed flyweight title fight between Gabby Fundora and Vivian Ruiz.
A light at the end of the tunnel for Oscar De La Hoya, who many feared would be jettisoned from the DAZN platform due to his failure to deliver the Ortiz versus Boots fight.
He's not exactly out of the woods yet. Things are getting messy in court between Oscar and Virgil's manager, Rick Mirigian. Details of Goldenboy's rift with Virgil Ortiz's manager emerge in lawsuit.
Rick's got a big fucking head.
Oscar De La Hoya's Goldenboy Promotions is seeking more than $10 million in damages from Virgil Ortiz Jr.'s manager, Rick Mirigian, claiming the veteran representative has interfered with its contract and the economic advantages of the agreement, amid reports that unbeaten WBC interim junior middleweight champion Ortiz is in the advanced stages of fight negotiations with recent unified welterweight champion Jaron Boots Ennis for a bout that could fall on April 25th on DAZN. The January 29th crafting of this lawsuit casts a shadow over the process. In the Goldenboy lawsuit, filed in California's Superior Court in LA by lead attorney Ricardo P. Sestero, the promoter claims Mirigian is interrupting efforts with the most successful of his 26 fighters in order to ingratiate himself with the new Zuffa boxing promotion headed by UFC CEO Dana White.
Oscar thinks Rick's been sandbagging it for the Boots fight, so that way they can break their contract and go over to Zuffa. That's what Oscar thinks.
Unfortunately, Mirigian has embarked on a campaign of self-promotion in an effort to ingratiate himself with the newest player in the boxing world, Dana White, and Zuffa, Sestero wrote, in a transparent effort to curry favor with Zuffa, Mirigian has deliberately and willfully interfered with Goldenboy's contracts for his own personal interest. He is acting for himself only. Mirigian and De La Hoya declined to respond to the lawsuit in interview requests from Boxing Scene. The lawsuit alleges Mirigian engaged in a campaign of self-promotion and has disclosed private details of Ortiz's contractual situation with competing promoters, including Zuffa, Canelo Promotions, and Matchroom.
Virgil Ortiz has alleged in his own lawsuit against Goldenboy that the promoters' expiring union with streaming partner DAZN provides Ortiz, 27, the freedom to leave Goldenboy. Goldenboy counters in the lawsuit that it signed Ortiz to a 3-year deal in August of 2024 when he won the WBC interim title by defeating Sergey Boachuk, clinching the right to exclusively negotiate all of Ortiz's boxing activities and matches. Any other offers by third parties were to be presented to Goldenboy, the lawsuit claims.
Now that's what's called matching rights.
Essentially what Matchroom had going on with Bam Rodriguez at the time that Zuffa offered Bam a deal, Matchroom had the right to match it, which they did. Goldenboy claims to have those same rights over Virgil.
Rick Mirigian is alleged to have shared terms, minimum purses, and the importance of the DAZN union to rival promoters, weakening Goldenboy's position, the lawsuit claims. That continued through these Ortiz versus Ennis talks, with the lawsuit claiming that while believing it was making good progress in talks, Mirigian was working behind the scenes to interfere with these negotiations. By talking to Ennis's promoter Matchroom, Mirigian was undermining talks to arrange a different deal. That, according to Goldenboy, has resulted in sabotaging the promoter's ties to Ortiz and DAZN, triggering the lawsuit to confront his alleged misconduct. Goldenboy seeks injunctive relief to stop the alleged interference and disclosed it is in danger of having its 2026-2027 license fee from DAZN reduced because of this dispute.
And I can only say now what I said before. I feel like Oscar's lawsuit against Rick is more difficult to prove because do you have text messages, email correspondence, voicemails, something that constitutes what you're saying, that proves he was interfering? Because if you don't,
Witness testimony, something,
you're pissing in the wind. Whereas Rick's lawsuit against Goldenboy is more finite. That the moment Goldenboy Promotions' deal with DAZN ended, that voided Virgil's existing contract, because if you don't have a broadcaster,
he's free to go.
even if he signed a 3-year deal in 2024, that deal is voided if you don't have a place for him to fight. Technically you don't, because you're still in the process of ironing out a new deal with DAZN. So who's to say that Virgil can't use that as a window of opportunity to leave?
If you're in the process of ironing out a new deal, that means the old one ended. So if it's the way that Rick Mirigian's lawsuit says it is, Virgil doesn't have to stick around while you guys make amends. He can go. I saw last week that there were still reports coming out about negotiations taking place between Boots and Virgil to try and still do the fight. I sincerely doubt they get it over the line while these lawsuits are going on. The only silver lining in all of this is that Goldenboy is still staging talks with DAZN to renew their deal.
But they might lose Virgil. That is a distinct possibility.
And if they do, they may get a reduced licensing fee as a result of losing one of their flagship fighters.